Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I am being joined today by Don Seiple, president of St. Luke's Monroe campus. Don, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, great. I look forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Well, Don, you and I had the opportunity to work together a few years ago when you had first started as president of St. Luke's Monroe campus. And it's just been awesome to see how that campus has continued to grow and advance and really serve the patients and people of Monroe County. So exciting to have you here. I want to learn a little bit more about you. So tell our audience, where did you grow up and what kind of kid were you?
Yeah, I grew up in the city of Easton, so I'm local to the Lehigh Valley, and I've been fortunate. I've been able to stay here my whole life, work in Monroe County now. And yeah, it was just I came from a blue collar family, two hardworking parents, and was one of those kids like to be outside and play and, enjoy my friends. And it was a great
Now,
place.
did you live in the actual city of Easton, or were you out in the countryside? Where were you?
Yeah, right down in the city of Easton. And yeah, it was like I said, at the time, it was a great place. It still is, but it was just a good place to live, and lots of good friends. And yeah, you learn to get along with people because there were so many people around,
What about your family structure? Did you have siblings, and where do you kind of fall in that?
Yeah, I have an older sister, and so I'm the youngest. And she still lives in Easton and works in the accounting field. So she never left the old neighborhood. And I was fortunate to live in a bunch of different places around the valley, getting to experience Allentown and Bethlehem and some of those areas as well.
When you think about your childhood, you talk about living in a city. I was fortunate to live about 2 blocks kind of outside of town. It was a big deal when we were allowed to walk to town and get slice of pizza, get the penny candy, and ride our bikes. And did you have experiences like that? Did you have neighborhood friends and that kind of looked out for each other?
Yeah, like the playground was the big place, and you played basketball and walk. Like you said, there was a corner store like 2 blocks from the house where you'd go get a popsicle or some gum. And I had a newspaper route when I started when I was 11 years old till I was 16. And
it's amazing how many people we interview on the podcast, or I interview on the podcast, that had paper routes. Now, I did not have a paper route, but my brother did, and I was his fill-in. Yes. So I did substitute on occasion. Tell me about that. About what age were you, and are there some lessons you learned from that you still take with you today?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I started when I was 11 years old, and I did it till I was 16 years old when I could actually get a working papers and a job. And it taught me discipline. So you had to do it every day. I had a route that Monday through Friday was after school, and then weekends you had to get up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock to get the paper out in the morning. But so it taught you that. It was before everyone paid online, so you had to knock on doors for your money, right? You had to manage your money. Every 2 weeks you had to pay your bill. So you learn basic business principles because you owed the paper, and whatever's left was yours. And so it just started to teach you those basic things, good customer service because you get better tips, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You think about even just now that the kind of discomfort a lot of young people have just picking up a phone, let alone knocking on a door.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of amazing. I wonder how we can replicate that today. And I know, it's interesting because, and we'll get a little bit more into your career, but I would imagine in your role as president of St. Luke's Monroe campus, there is a lot of customer service. There's a lot of interface with staff and patients and everything else. And I bet those early days on the paper route taught you a lot of those skills.
They did. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And now what about sports school? Were you into school? Did you play sports? Did you do music? Tell me about your interests.
So I guess that was a time then too, where, somebody had to be a winner, somebody had to be a loser. Right. And I did like basketball and baseball, though honestly, I wasn't really good at them. So, I learned to play and be part of a team. So they were team sports, which I really liked. And I lived near a playground, so I played a lot of street basketball. And, there were certain parts of it I was good at and others I wasn't. But, again, had a lot of fun, and never really good enough to play like baseball or basketball in high school, which that didn't bother me. I remember 10th grade, I tried out for the high school basketball team, and looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like,
Hey, but good for you for trying, right?
yeah, I was like, well, what the heck? This wasn't working. But then I think my junior year, I decided I really want to play a high school sport, and I really was at that awkward age of a boy, kind of, and I needed to get in shape, so I took up running. And so for like a year, I ran really just to get in shape. I just was like, I got to get in shape, and I got pretty good at it. And so as a senior in high school, I did run in high school and was pretty decent at it, and so I was able to participate in a high school sport for a year. So that was kind of cool for me.
Yeah, nice to be able to add that into, your high school experience, right? Being a part of a team. And people think of running often as an individualized sport, but there is sort of a team quality to it. Did you find that?
Yeah, in cross country, you're the way it works is, the top 7 runners, is what your score is based off of. And so like, yeah, you're still running as a team. You're not winning as an individual, you're winning as a team. And then even with track, even though there's individual events, the track meets are team based as well. There's team scores. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, as far as a student goes, yeah, I was a pretty good student. I wasn't like the best student or the worst. I feel as I got older in high school, I got better at school. But I also believed in a balance. So, I worked. So I even though I participated in sports, I still worked 20 hours a week on top of school and on top of
And
sport.
was that a different job at that point in high school? What were you doing?
Yeah. So that's how I got into healthcare. I got a job as a dishwasher at Easton Hospital. And that was when I started in healthcare, and I've never worked anywhere but a hospital since then. And so I always tell people I got my start in healthcare as washing dishes. And so, and I think with school, I learned that balance was important. I think being well-rounded and balanced. So I think, having decent grades and participating in sports and working and friends, to me, the balance was more important than being, I guess, really good at all of them. It was just kind of the approach I kind of took to life. And I probably still take that. It's to a certain degree today.
It's so interesting that you were able to think about that and kind of master it at a young age, because I feel like it's the thing most adults are trying to achieve, right? We're always talking about balance. And it's so interesting to me that you had that early on in high school. Did your parents encourage you to work? Were you required to work? Or was it something you just liked doing?
Yeah, it was kind of, I had to. And again, great parents, hardworking. My mom stayed home till I was 16, and my dad mostly worked in steel, like manufacturing type businesses. And when I was in high school, he lost his job. The plant closed, and it was a rough couple of years. And then he got back on his feet again. But working was just something that was always, you were going to do, and I'm grateful for that. It gave me a base of being a hard worker, and so we learned at a young age to take care of ourselves and, provide for ourselves. If we wanted a car, or if I wanted to go out or do something, I had to work.
That's a great lesson to be instilled at an early age. When your dad lost his job, Don, what kind of impression did that make on you? And did it influence the way you sort of went into adulthood and the way you looked at your own career, perhaps?
Yeah, it did. So, again, good family, but we didn't have a lot. And so as I started thinking about college, I went to a trade school. That was my first education was a trade school in electronics, and it was 2 years, so it wasn't real long. And it was kind of impressed upon me. I had to get out there and start working, full time, and so I could get a good job. And so I think what it impressed upon me all the time was, I always tell people, like, I was looking for a job that had security and good benefits, and I like pay, and I really wasn't thinking career or leadership. By far was never anything I ever thought of. It was just, how can I get a good job that would provide me stability and options as I went through my life. If, no matter what happened, I'd have something to fall back on. And that's kind of the approach I took initially out of, when I was in high school, and then out of the trade school I went to.
Excellent. Well, Don, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'd like to discuss more about your pursuing of a higher education, finding a career, and how you sort of turned those early days of hard work into something lasting into your life now. So everybody stay tuned. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back. Ever wonder what you get when you combine an historical riverside city, high-end dining, entertainment venues, and craft distilleries? The city of Easton, of course. One of my favorite spots is the Easton Public Market, right in the center of it all. But there's a variety of places to choose. Whether you're looking for a park to unwind or a night out with friends, check out Discover Lehigh Valley's website to find all the hot spots in Easton. Visit their website at discoverlehighvalley.com for more information. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and we've been having a great chat here with Don Seiple, president of the St. Luke's Monroe campus. Don, thank you for being here. You were just telling us a little bit about, I think you went to Lincoln Technical Institute, and what did you study there?
Yeah, so it was at the time I took an electronics program, and so I had mentioned to you earlier I was working at Easton Hospital in the kitchen. So I did that for about 2.5 years when I was in high school. About 2 years when I was in high school, 2.5, and I did a lot of different things in the kitchen, from washing dishes to eventually doing some like prep cooking, that kind of stuff. And right before I went to trade school, I got a job in the hospital in the storeroom. So while I was in trade school, I worked stocking shelves at night in the hospital. Again, all of these things along the way have continue to give me an understanding of different aspects of healthcare. So that's kind of I went on to working in the storeroom.
You had mentioned going to trade school because you were looking for something that would give you sort of stability and maybe benefits and that kind of job.
Yeah.
What was it? What was the application after you went to trade school? Where did you go and where did you work with that degree that you had?
Yeah, so I started looking, because a lot of people were going into industry at the time. IBM was still really big. People were going up to New York and working in IBM, and it was a great place to work. It was when things were still in hardware. Software wasn't really a thing yet. So, the jobs were in like Kodak and IBM and, that sort of thing. And, I looked around at jobs in the industry, and I was at the hospital, and there was a job in biomedical engineering, which I had no idea what that was. And it was fixing medical equipment. And I had interviewed for some jobs down outside of Philadelphia. And I interviewed for this job at the hospital, and the pay was as good as anywhere else. And I'm like, well, I can stay in my own community with my family and get a start. And so I took it, and I liked where I was at. And I did that for about 12.5 years.
And what did that job encompass? So you take the degree,
Yeah.
you're going to biomedical engineering department, you're thinking, what do I do here? Tell us what that job encompassed.
Well, at first it was, like an entry-level job. So I was fixing beds, and I was fixing like infusion pumps, kind of the entry-level type equipment. And then over time, I got to do more complex things like dialysis machines and patient care monitors, and I got into the operating room and did that, again, as I progressed through my career there, and doing installations of systems. I started to learn how to do that. And, after, towards the end of my time there, Easton Hospital wasn't doing so well, and they were starting to look for a partner to partner with. And I had a young family, and I was like, well, it's time for me to start looking, because I was worried about my stability there, and they were really struggling. And that's how I came to St. Luke's. I knew some people that had come over to St. Luke's, and I had interviewed, and I was offered a position. And so I came over, and they had hired me then to fix nuclear medicine equipment. So it was a new skill I was going to learn and bring that service in-house. And so it was really a cool opportunity for me. And so that's what I did. I came to St. Luke's and started fixing medical equipment.
Don, it really is amazing to me when you hear about your career path. And I think this is so important for people listening. By taking opportunity, playing to your strengths, you really did learn almost every aspect of what goes into making a hospital tick. So I don't know that everyone has that path. And then in 2008, if I'm correct, you decided that you were going to go back to school. So what kind of propelled you to make that decision to get your, business administration degree at Northampton Community College?
Yeah, so actually when I was at Easton and I got into the medical field, I took a few classes because I went to school for electronics, but I didn't have some of the medical background. So I was in an Easton Hospital. I took a few classes like anatomy and physiology and, some things medically related, because I had to learn about that piece of it to figure out how the machines worked, right? So I did a few classes there. Then I kind of didn't do anything for a while. Then when I came to St. Luke's, it was it was around 2000. And it was only a short time after I started there that like a coordinator job came about, and some of the techs approached me about taking it. And quite frankly, they just came to me because they didn't want anyone from the outside taking it. And even though I was in my early 30s, I was still one of the older people in the department with more experience. So I was like, oh, like the coordinator thing, I can still fix things, and it's more about like managing day-to-day schedules. So it's kind of cool. And shortly after I took that job, the plan was to eliminate it and now make it like a manager position. And that was a whole new step for me. And eventually I thought, like, look, this type of opportunity doesn't come along often. Like I talked about it with my wife and decided, let's try it. If it doesn't work out, I can always go back, right? And it was around that time I decided, like, look, if this is a path I'm going to take, I got to get more education, right? I can't continue to advance with a trade school degree in electronics, which nothing wrong with that, but I knew that if I had to go forward. So I enrolled in the community college and started taking classes part-time, and eventually graduating with my business degree from Northampton. Then I kept going on to Liberty University and, got an undergraduate degree. But I knew that I couldn't just rest on what I had, that I had to continue to work. And
what was that experience like for you, Don, being, in your 30s, having a family, working full time, having so much experience really in the practical side of business?
Yeah.
What did you find were the things that filled in the gaps for you educationally? And what did you find you brought to the table that maybe some of the younger students didn't have?
Yeah, I think going back as an adult student, wow, it was so much easier because now I had some life experience, right? So you do assignments that when you were younger, you struggle with because you're like, you kind of make it up, right? What you think it's going to be. And, when you go back as an adult student with some life experience, now you're drawing on that experience. And in some ways, it was easier for some of those types of classes that I took. But it did start to fill in the gaps because I think, early on, I don't, learning the difference between being, a manager and a leader, and some people do both, some do one, some do the other. And, starting to understand what leadership meant, like it took me a long time to really understand what it meant to be a leader, right?
And what does it mean to you when you think about people listening out there, thinking about their career path and where they're headed, and knowing that you can take on roles of management and leadership at any point? What does it mean to you to be a leader?
Yeah, so I think when I think of management, it's really, can I manage process or can I manage schedules, right? But as a leader, you're kind of, now what you're really doing is you're setting the course for where you're going. You're setting the example for where you're going. There have been times where I've been in some really tough situations as a leader, and you have to own that, and you have to helping people through a really difficult situation. COVID was probably a great example of that, where having to lead people through a very uncertain future. They look to you. They look to you as how are you making decisions? Are you showing up every day? Are you providing good guidance? Are you making good decisions? Right? Because if they got to have confidence in you, like they're working for you, and they're putting a lot of trust in you, and their families are putting a lot of trust in you, and they want to know that stability is there, and that stability to me is predicated on again making good decisions and treating people fairly, and really the buck stops with you. When a problem comes to you, there's nobody else that you go to. It's you that has to solve, you with maybe a good team around you that solve those problems.
Absolutely. But it's a good way to put it when you're in that position, understanding how you're connected to everyone around you, sideways, up, down, et cetera.
Yeah.
And speaking of sort of that mobility, when you took on this new role and you went after these degrees, what was the trajectory at that point then? Did it open up your thought process at all to where you wanted to go and where you were headed?
Kind of, like I have to be honest with you, I've never been the type of person that had this end point, like I really focused on where I was. One of the things I've learned, and I try to mentor new people, like new leaders, in that you really have to, it's good to have like a goal of where you want to be, but you really have to do what you're doing really well. Because I've seen a few leaders where they're so focused on where they're going that they don't do a good job where they're at, and they don't treat people well where they're at. And at least in the organization within St. Luke's, that doesn't bode well, right? And so, like, to me, you've got to, whatever you do it really well. And for me, it has served me well that in that people have recognized what my abilities and my abilities were, and opportunities came with that, right? I didn't have to overly seek them out. It was more about me just doing a really good job and being me, and seeing what was coming next, and being happy where I was, right? Like, so I wasn't unhappy where I was. But when the opportunity came along, then, I certainly was open to it.
Well, I think you're making a great point of saying it's important to be forward thinking, but at the same time, you've got to be making an impact where you're standing at that moment. And you were faced with a really exciting opportunity to become the president of the Monroe campus,
Yeah.
as St. Luke's was really just in development of breaking ground on that campus. So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, not only are you president of a hospital where you essentially started washing dishes, working in the stock room, working in biomedical engineering, fixing things, worked your way up, and now you've got this opportunity, and the hospital hasn't even really been built yet.
Right.
So tell me what that feeling was like for you, and what were you most focused on in those early years of the Monroe campus?
Yeah, so I went from being like different roles in biomed, and then I became a vice president with even expanded my roles more and my experience more, and it was really good. And so when I was in that vice president role, and we were getting ready to build Monroe, I had done a lot with like construction and road work and that kind of stuff. And so at the Anderson campus, when we built it, I was involved in that construction myopically with like medical equipment, right? And so when we started to build Monroe, I went to Joel Fagerstrom, our COO, and said, "Hey, Joel, like, I'd like to get involved with this project out of the ground, meaning more from like a construction standpoint." He's like, "Sure, you can." Sure, basically said, "Hey, no problem. You want to be the administrative lead?" So I was doing my VP role. I was the administrative lead. And so it was really cool because I got to do it from the ground out, right? And as I started to go through that process, I had some people start talking to me about the possibility of me, becoming the president of that campus. And so another important thing is always having mentors in your life, right? And I always try to encourage people to have more than one mentor. And I had some of them at St. Luke's, and then I had people looking out for me, and they started talking to me about this opportunity. And for me, it was like a huge step, right? And the way I've approached life in these opportunities is I tend to look back on the skill sets that I had and the approach that I took that helped me be successful in the new roles that I had along the way. And I was kind of like, well, I could take those same skill sets and that same approach into this new role and be successful. And that in St. Luke's is just a really great organization to work in. They're not going to let you fail. It's just a great team environment. And so, I went through a process. I did interview. There were external candidates, and I was selected. And and then really having to think big picture of opening a hospital, right? And getting a team, it was really a process of hiring a really good team and beginning to plan the operational piece of it. I was planning the construction of it, but now planning the operational and the opening of it.
It must be pretty rewarding to not only see the hospital itself, the physical building come to fruition, but being kind of in the beginning ground level up of the hiring.
Yes.
And how has that been now looking forward? What are we at now? 7 years?
We were just open 6 years in October.
6 years. So, hiring 7 years ago and looking, how much of that team have you retained, and what does it mean to be growing the hospital in that region really together with that team?
Yeah, we have a fair number of people that were with us from the beginning. Some have moved on in the organization, some outside the organization. And, what I learned is when you're hiring any business, certainly healthcare, and you're hiring a whole group of, we had started with 350 employees at the time we had to hire. And just by the nature of hiring so many people at once, sometimes there were just some people that weren't a good fit. And then, that kind of reinforces what you're looking for as you continue to build your team and what you're looking for. And for us at St. Luke's, the culture is so important, and hiring for fit. And it taught me a lot about and gave me a lot more confidence as we're hiring people. And you know, I know you have a lot of experience in this as well. And sometimes a candidate comes along and there might be certain aspects of them that are just incredible, but they're not a good fit for your organization. And I've learned that if all things aren't what they need to be a fit in the organization, then they're not a good fit for you. Even if they might be the best at what they do, they just might not be a good fit for you and your organization.
Absolutely great message. And I think it is so true. And unfortunately, a lot of the times you learn that in leadership through trial and error. But as you get a little bit more experience as a leader and a little bit savvier around hiring, I think culture and fit really trumps everything. And in fact, your story is an amazing one because maybe on paper at first you didn't have exactly what was needed, but you had the fit for the culture and you've grown with that, which is amazing. So we're going to take a quick breakdown. When we get back, we want to talk about the Lehigh Valley and everything you love about it. So stick with us. This is Unscripted with Russo. Time to take your workout outdoors. Discover Lehigh Valley is a great resource for finding easily accessible nature trails with stunning views and challenging terrain. Whether you're exploring the Delaware and Lehigh Trail or going for a jog on the Ironton Rail Trail, explore Discover Lehigh Valley to get you started. Follow them on Instagram, Lehigh Valley PA. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Ashley Russo, and this is Unscripted. We have had an amazing conversation with Don Seiple, the president of the St. Luke's Monroe campus. Don, you have such a great story growing up right here in Easton, taking advantage of getting a degree from a trade school and working your way up from the kitchen to the stockroom to fixing things in engineering, and now president of a hospital. So what a Cinderella story it really is. Thanks for sharing all of that with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are a native to the Lehigh Valley, growing up in Easton. We want to talk to you a little bit about what you love. So what do you love about the Lehigh Valley? Why have you chosen to make your home here?
I just love the people, first of all. I think it's a great place. And there's just so much to do outdoors, the proximity to New York City or the shore or Philadelphia or Lancaster. There's just so much within a day trip away. But really the people, I think about living in Easton, Friday night lights, football, and I'm active. So like I like to ride my bike. There's a lot of places to ride bike, hiking, skiing. There's just
that Easton Phillipsburg rivalry for football is really something. That is unbelievable for people who may not be familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just love the feel of high school football in general. And and there's just so much to do in the Valley. I really enjoy it. I think, and when I was younger, I would travel thinking about where do I want to move when I get older. And the more I traveled, the more I realized that I didn't want to move anywhere. I just wanted to figure out where I wanted to travel next.
You mentioned getting outdoors and running and biking. So what are some of your favorite places to go and do that if people were looking for a little adventure right in their backyard?
Yeah, so biking, I mean, gosh, there's a huge trail network throughout, certainly throughout Easton and Bethlehem Township behind our Anderson campus. There are bike trails where you can go bike riding and, hiking. I live near Jacobsburg State Park now, which is what a great place to go hiking.
So beautiful there. It's really incredible. Almost all year round, really.
Yeah, it's great. The environmental center, you can get free in the winter. You can sign out snowshoes if you want to try that. So it's just a cool place to go. But yeah.
What about restaurants? So what about restaurants in the Lehigh Valley? And then I also want to mention, what about restaurants up by the Monroe campus? Because I have to say, my husband goes up there for work and he always comes home and he says, I don't need a lunch because there's great food up by Monroe.
Yeah, look, growing up in Easton, I am so happy to see what's happening downtown today, the revitalization, and it has an incredible restaurant scene with places like Sette Luna and Third and Ferry and the River Grill, and people love Oak. So, Easton is just a great place if you haven't been there to go and enjoy the restaurant scene and some of the festivals. Really do enjoy that. In Monroe County, my favorite breakfast place is Dale's. It's just like this breakfast lunch place. We had it this morning. In fact, we were celebrating somebody's birthday, so we got takeout. So it was really
the go-to place.
Yeah. The Stroudmoor is a really cool place. They have some nice food around the holidays. It's a really neat place to go. There's just so many cool little venues. The Blue Ridge Winery, if you want to go and get a drink and just hang out, and they have pizza there. You can bring your own food. That's a really cool place just to hang out. And
That's a great one to put on people's radar for sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, before we let you go, we do a little rapid fire question. So I just want to confirm you have not heard these questions.
Oh,
All right. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. What is your favorite hobby or secret talent?
Home improvements. I like building things.
Really? Okay. So a little bit of
I used
woodworking.
to have a home improvement business on the side.
Ron, how are you just mentioning this right now? Is there anything you can't do?
Lots.
All right. What is the best advice that you've ever received?
Oh, just this was one I heard recently. Do you want to be right or do you want to be successful?
Yeah. So I would say my husband says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good one. All right. What actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
Oh my God, I don't even know because I can't even remember actors. Why not Brad Pitt, right? Why not?
Go for it. I love it. All right. If you didn't have the job you have now, and I'm going to say a caveat for you, and it cannot be something you've already done because you've got a lot of cool things done. What would you be doing instead? What's a job or a career you would love to try?
I think maybe probably like real estate, like probably residential. I mentioned I like to fix things, so probably flipping homes and maybe like rentals, something a little bit more independent and entrepreneurial like that. Or one that's come into my mind recently is I'd love to find a very unique event space, boutique event space, like a barn or something that you could do like a boutique events in.
All right. Well, that is great. I think those are both two goals that you could definitely achieve, Don. So, maybe this is the next chapter, the next side hustle is going to be be that. All right. My last question for you is name someone who inspires you.
I'd say my father. He was just a hard worker. He's still alive, but he was just a hardworking guy, didn't complain. I learned a lot from him. He got up every day and went to work, no matter how he felt. He worked all kinds of shifts, just didn't complain. He just did his job and he did it well.
Well, on that note, we're going to end it right there because that is phenomenal advice. Work hard, don't complain, put a smile on your face, try things.
And also with administration, so I have the ability to voice concerns
about your life and your career with us here today on Unscripted.
Great, thank you.
All right, everyone, until next time.
Liked what you saw? Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another video.
To see more of The Peak TV, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us on WFMZ Channel 69.